What are you afraid of? What's the thing that keeps you up at night? In today's world, these questions are often pretty easy to answer. Maybe we fear for our health, or for our parents, our children's, our grandchildren's health or safety, in a world that seems less and less safe each day. Maybe we fear for our society, for our community, wondering when or even if things will return to a recognizable normal. Some of us are kept up at night by the unrest within our nation, kept up by the uncertainties that lie ahead, kept up by the feeling of complete powerlessness to do anything about everything around us. Fear, for many, is a part of our everyday existence. And with it comes stress and anxiety and doubt. Even here at church, we hold on to our plans loosely these days, knowing that things could change at a moment's notice, depending on the number of COVID cases going up or down in our community. These are difficult and trying times that we live in. Everyone is affected. And it makes me wonder, as Christians, do we handle fear and anxiety differently? Does our faith impact how we fear or what we worry about? Should it? Today's our last sermon in our series on the songs of our faith. And today's hymn is one that is quite well suited for the current times we're living in. It's the hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul." It's another familiar hymn that many of us know, a favorite to sing at funerals, mainly because the message is one of peace and comfort and hope. And yet, ironically, the story behind the song was birthed through grief and sadness and loss. It's a story that, once heard, makes the meaning of the lyrics all the more powerful to sing. And so with that being said, I want to tell you the story of Horatio Spafford. Spafford was a prominent lawyer and businessman in Chicago in the 1860s. He was married to a woman named Anna, and they had 4 daughters and 1 son. Chicago real estate was booming at the time, and so instead of just being a lawyer, around 1870 or so, Spafford decided to invest in a really large piece of land north of the city of Chicago. Shortly after his investment, his 4-year-old son died of scarlet fever. And then a few months after that, the Great Fire in Chicago destroyed all of the land that he'd invested in, essentially ruining him and his family financially. The Spaffords, they held on to some business interests, though, and with his work as an attorney, they got by, and they even managed to have a family vacation to Europe. And as the date for the departure got closer, there was this economic turndown. Later, they called it the Panic of 1873. And Spafford and the family had even more financial losses. So much so that he decided to stay back for a little while and send his wife and children on so he could take care of some of the financial troubles they were in. So he sent his wife and 4 daughters ahead onto the ship. He made plans to come on a ship a few days later. But then tragedy struck again. While crossing the Atlantic, the ship his family was on collided with another vessel, and it sank almost immediately. One account says it was completely submerged in under 12 minutes. All 4 of his daughters, his only remaining children, died. His wife was the only one who was rescued. It took several days for his wife to reach land on a different ship. And when she did, she managed to telegram him to tell him about the loss of their daughters. Famously, her message began with the words, "Saved alone." Spofford traveled to meet his grieving wife shortly after he received the message, and while he was on the ship that was bringing him to her, the captain notified them when they were passing over the area where his wife's boat originally sank. And as he looked out towards the great expanse of ocean where his daughters had passed away, he was inspired to write the words to this hymn, the hymn we know as "It Is Well With My Soul." The first verse, it states, "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrow like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul." The words of this hymn, coming out of such a tragic story, they seem impossible. Here was a man in the depths of his grief, having suffered calamity after calamity, having lost each of his 5 children. How on earth could it be well with his soul? Similarly, how can we, a people who have plenty of valid reasons to be afraid and anxious right now, how can we make it well with our soul? Are we bad Christians if we let fear get the best of us sometimes? Does it mean that our faith is weak if we feel anxiety about our health or our finances or our future? I think we struggle sometimes to answer these questions because we come from a either-or perspective instead of a both-and look at things. I think we think of our belief and faith of kind of in one hand, and then on the other we see fear and anxiety over here. I think we think of them as being mutually exclusive, separate, apart from one another. And it can be tempting to think that our role as Christians is to almost use our belief in God as some sort of magic eraser, wiping away all of our fears and anxieties, making our worry about things just disappear. And if that's how things work for you, that's awesome. But as I've walked with various people through death and loss and grief, I've come to see how this expectation of God somehow being a magic eraser can really set us up for failure. We have fears and we have anxieties, we suffer loss, we grieve, we get sad. It's part of being human. And when we tell ourselves that a belief in God should take away all of those things, we deny the reality of our human experience, of our human condition. Instead of a magic eraser, I think God operates much like a rock in the middle of the ocean that we can kind of tether ourselves to. A rock that we're secured to so that even when fears and anxieties come and wash over us, even when they're so large that they leave us bruised and beaten from their pounding, that we're able to remain firmly tethered, firmly grounded in God's love, in God's grace. God doesn't take away all of the fear. God is present in the midst of our fears. In the midst of the storms of our lives and the storms that we all go through. It's not that either we have faith in God or we have anxieties or fears. It's a both and. We have anxieties and fears, and we know that God is with us as we face them, keeping us tethered and close. I find comfort in the verses we read from Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though the waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble. God is our refuge and our strength. Being Christian, it won't prevent the mountains from shaking or make us impervious to the heavy winds or the huge waves. Rather, our assurance in God, it gives us a solid rock to tether ourselves to, so that we can be sure and fearless, so that we can weather the storm, so that we can get back on our feet again each time the earth spins out of control. With God as our anchor, we're able to endure life's challenges, upsets, and trials. And we can come out on the other side, like Horatio Spafford did, singing, "Indeed, it is well with my soul." Amen.